War Game Warriors.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first podcast. Today, we're going to break down our performance and experience at this past weekend's five-man team tournament at the Toronto Gaming Expo, more commonly known as TGX. Today, I have with me Jason, who was our captain, incidentally, with this event. And we're going to kind of go over, what the event was, what our team lists, our team comp was, what was Jason's approach when it came to the pairings table. We're going to kind of go over like a high level highlights about those 5 rounds, if things caught our eyes throughout those 5 games, how we pivoted, our overall standings and podium finish, and our wrap up. Like what's to come for us as a team and an organization, moving forward and to the new year of 2025. But Jason, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony, for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to having some conversations regarding the past weekend's event. Yeah, a lot happened and ended up quite happy with our finish.
Yeah, so we ended up finishing second, which I was really, really happy about. I mean, everyone
Ex
likes to win, but it's great to,
yeah,
have.
no, exactly. Yeah, like I think going into this tournament here, we didn't expect to finish first. Our main goal was actually just to podium, so be within the top three, and then exceeded our expectations of bypassing the third and going straight to second. So definitely can't complain about our placing. I'm very happy with the results.
No, likewise as well. And there were 16 teams in this event. So it was a five-man event of 16 teams. So there was a total of 80 players at this event. And as we're going to go more into detail about it, uh, these teams were no slouches. Like we had to fight blood, sweat, tears to get to that podium finish. I'm sure Jason, you'd agree to that. But yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It wasn't our run was definitely not easy, but in any sense of the imagination. Yeah. As we go through our pairings, you'll see that like the teams that we played against, they were all very very good players. So nothing was a freebie for us.
No, it definitely wasn't. So let's start with our team list and our team comp. So in our five-man, we had myself. I was on Custodes. I was bringing Folger's list. So for those who didn't know, Folgers is the person who won Worlds recently. So I brought his list, which was the 3 Wardens, the 3 Blade Champs, Draxus in the guard, 2 tanks, and Sisters and Chaff. Adel brought Ultramarines, which we almost figuratively put a gun to his head to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As
And
like for people that don't know, Adel is a diehard Blood Angels fan, and it took a lot of convincing and a lot of stats and a lot of things to go our way in order for Adel to finally say, you know what, we're gonna put down the Blood Angels mantle and take on the Ultramarines instead.
I'm pretty sure I lost more sleep trying to convince that guy to run Ultramarines than like the actual event the night before the event.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And even when like he was painting, he like rebelled and refused to like fully commit to Ultra Smurfs. He took time to like strip down all the Ultramarine symbols, painted them red as like a big like nah, I'm a Blood Angels at heart kind of guy.
Yeah, like when you go over Adel's list, his list name says it all, It literally says F Ultramarines.
Can I
That's
see his
basically what he says.
Let me see his list right now. So his list is literally called F Ultramarines. And you want to go over his list? I think you know his list better than I do.
Yeah, sure. So this is a very standard in the new meta, I would say, Ironstorm list. It has the lieutenant that gives the rerolls on an objective. It has the enhancement for the choose something to fall back, shoot, or advance and shoot. And then it has Marinus Calgar for the advancing and charging, accompanied by the blade company, or the company champions. Just a lot of like efficient bodies. Calgar also gives you a CP, and then there's like Gilliman that lets you use free strats or discounted by 1 per turn. Very similar to a Hive Tyrant. So effectively, this list is playing with 15 additional CP on top of the 10 that you get throughout the game. And then really to round it off, it's just 3 Vindicators, 3 Ballistas, or no, two Vindicators, sorry, three Ballistas, and then your choice of any other tanks. And the goal of the list is really just to deploy on the line, move forward, and then table you and score. So
And
pretty straightforward.
I actually played into this list because I was expecting to see a lot of these at TGX. So I played into this, and correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like this is one of the most shootiest lists out there in the meta right now, and you really have to respect it because I would shoot. I practice my list, so I use custody tanks, and I would shoot his ballistas, and he would be like, or his Vindicator, sorry. And he'd be like, all right, I'm gonna 1 CP for free pop smoke, so now you're -1 to hit. I'm also gonna 1 CP AOC, so it's -1 AP. And I have cover. So my strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage, he's saving effectively on threes.
Yep, it's a very resilient list. A lot of the vehicles have a base 2-up save in this list. So, like you said, with cover, it's effectively ignoring the one AP, and then with AP2, you're still saving on threes, and then AOC, you're saving back on twos. It's very strong. It's comparable to Star Shatter in a sense where like they both run at you pretty fast in order to kill you. Star Shatter is slightly faster, but I think this list is a little bit more resilient in like a shoot off
Yeah,
because of those saves and toughness.
for sure. And now that you brought up Star Shatter, it's surprisingly we also not in you know we also have Star Shatter in our comp as well. Ryan Pierce was running Star Shatter, so let's take a look at his list. So his list, I can kind of go over it. He has the Silent King for the ignore mods and the rerolls. He has the good stuff with the characters. He has the Hexmark Destroyer, the Chrono. So two Hexmark Destroyers that have the enhancements for the fallback, shoot, and I believe reroll ones, right, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's on the barge. If he's
Yeah,
running the barge, if yeah,
yeah,
that has the real ones aura, and then
yeah,
the hex mark has the fallback shoot charge. But the biggest distinction is that this list can use that anytime during the movement phase, whereas Iron Storm is locked into in the command phase. So you kind of have to plan your position in Iron Storm, but then it's a little bit more forgiving in Star Shatter.
yeah. And exactly like, and Brian brought all the good stuff. So Emotech for additional CP, Silent King of -1 damage at ignore mods is just a brutal piece to get through. The CCB to get the rerolls, Hex Marks, Flayed Ones for, and Obsidian Destroyers for mission play, Tomb Blades for mission play, and of course the standard 3 DDAs and 2 Trogstalkers. Now, Shock Stalkers are just so good for their points. They are a 4-up invuln. And as a Custodies player, I know that 4s are fickle. But man, if you spike those 4-ups on 110 points, it's just it can sway the game by those 4 dice rolls alone, depending on how many 4-ups they make. And this list this list works really well when you pair it with Addles Ultramarines because they kind of like if the defender or opposing team puts up a list that can't go into shooting, we can pin it with these two, and then it becomes a problem for the other team, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
And then Jason, you brought CSM the standard bio list, I believe.
Yeah, I can go over my list quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, funny thing about this list is that I really effectively only had one rep with this list before list submission. So I was really kind of just playing, out of my ass. Like I've had experience playing CSM before, so it's not completely unfamiliar with me. But in terms of like knowing the complete nuances of the list, definitely struggled there. And as we discussed later on in the podcast, I'll tell you when I really kind of fell flat on my face there. But to go over the list, it has Fabius Bile to as a warlord in order to allow me to reroll the buffs on the creations of Bile detachment rule. I have Cypher for the Vect Aura. It's pretty much a mainstay in most Chaos lists. There's a Chaos Lord there with a Demon Hammer as well as a Power Fist. And then he has the enhancement that allows him to reroll hits as well as getting him +1 damage. So when he connects, he can use his once per game chance for glory, I think is what it's called, and then it gives him kind of like a +1 stat to everything, which pushes his damage up to 4, which is amazing at breaking tanks or killing Terminators, whatever it may be. And then the the rest of the list is just a barrage of infantry where you have 20 chosen and two 10-mans. Oh, sorry, 20 possessed and two 10-mans, one 10-man chosen squad, another 5-man chosen squad, five legionnaires, 10 warp talons and 2x5s, and then finally at the end you have two war dogs of your choosing. So basically, this list is Anthony Vanilla's list from Art of Wars. So he's yeah, there you go. You can basically highlighting the team of Vanilla there. So basically, just copying his list just because I had no time to test and just figured that this list is proven. It's won a GT, so it can't be that bad, right? So
I remember in our week leading up to the submission, you jumped across like four factions. Because
I definitely did, yeah. So initially, I wanted to play Sister, or I wanted to play AdMech initially, but just couldn't get the hobby leg was a little bit too strong in that one, so I had to pivot. Wanted to go back to Sisters, but I found that their power was a little lacking. And then when the Orc Tactical Brigade came out, I was super intrigued by that, and I really wanted to run Orcs, but again, it was just a matter of not having enough reps. And I said I was thinking to myself that, at the end, if I was not going to have any reps, I think I should probably just play something that I'm the most familiar with, and it still has a lot of staying power. And I think that's why I ended up being Chaos Space Marines.
no, for sure. And finally, we had Eric Lynn. So Eric was running Bridgehead, and I think he was the only Astra Militarum player in this event that ran Bridgehead, probably because he was the only person who had was able to get like 50 scions because he's a
Yeah,
maniac.
that's exactly right. Like this list is a nasty, nasty list. Like it has like the 30 scions with the command to like give them the additional orders. So with like the bridgehead attachment, when they come down, they get like +1 to wound, I think. So all the plasmas and meltas are wounding on like fours and threes against most things. And then he has the 20-man blob of Deathcore with Krieg, which has like the 5 of Feel No Pain. It can grow models back. It's like a lot of OC manipulation here and a lot of like move blocking. So it's a list that if people aren't really prepared for it, or they're just expecting the traditional combined regiment tank list, it will really, really take you off guard. And this list is surprisingly effective at tabling like heavy infantry builds. So it's definitely a list I believe we'll be seeing more and more of as people can hobby up the actual scions to play.
Yeah, I definitely see this in the future as well. I'm not looking forward to facing this if I get paired into it at Las Vegas Open. So I'm hoping no one has 50 Scions ready to go by then, but we'll see. But I think we can go into our team approach. So, Jason, as the captain, when you see our 5-man, what was your approach when it came to pairings? What was like the vanilla approach of, who do we go? Who are you blunt? Who's the blunter? That kind of stuff. Can you give us more insight on that?
Yeah, definitely. So our main approach here was making sure that our Necron player, so Ryan, had always the optimal table choice. So we would look at the maps for all the rounds and then see which map that Necrons would like the most. And in order for him to get the table pick, we would have to put him up as our first defender. And then from there, we would kind of assess whether or not, like based on the people that are attacking the Necrons, which matchup would be either more beneficial to him, or it would be potentially something that he could take away from us because there was a lot of other bad matchups that are kind of sitting there waiting and trying to pin one of our teams. Um, so that's kind of like the starting approach for Necrons, and then we had a guard as well as Custodes as kind of like our main blunters, so to speak. These are the ones that we like really don't know, like in the some of the enemy lists where it's like, okay, no one really wants to play this. I'm just gonna throw you and play this and hope you can score a 10-10 kind of thing. And that was unfortunately what Anthony had to do all weekend, and he did a stellar job at it, even pulling out wins at some points, and which really surprised me because I was really expecting just like a draw or a small loss. But then Anthony really pulled through and got those W's and really shifted those points into our favor to get those wins at the end.
Yeah, no, that was definitely, very well condensed because it was definitely a slog. Like no one wanted Death Guard, and we'll go more in depth later. And I'm like, all right, guess I'll take it. And then Diogo tells me, "Oh yeah, I have -1 save and -1 damage, and technically -2 damage." And I go, "Great, so I can't touch you at all." That's great. But yeah, we'll go more into that detail later on. So let's go into pairing. So for round one, we got into, I think it was GTA 40K Grot Miss Grinches.
Yes, I believe that's what they were
Yes.
called.
So we played Adrian, Ario, Conrad, Lucas, and Taylor. All great guys. They had really great lists, and they definitely put in a lot of work and gave a good run. They gave a run for our money, that's for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, you're the captain. You did pairings. I was kind of sitting there like, give you whatever no one wanted. So tell me what the thought process was for you here.
Yeah, so when we initially saw our first pairing, before the event officially started, we were looking at it and we were like, okay, we definitely drew the short end of the straw here because like out of all the other teams, like we the two of us, the two teams here, we probably got the most uh tough pairings to go into round one. So our initial thought process was yeah, just to send Necrons in there and see what would bite. And I think what they ended up doing was they put I believe they ended up putting I think it was Dark Angels first, and then we gave them ultra like our Ultramarines, and then yeah, like from there we just kind of like went through the pairings, making sure that we tried to get as many good matchups as possible. We kind of threw you there under the bus because no one wanted to play Eldar. That was a really nasty Eldar list with the Fire Prisms and the Avatar of Cain. So we were like, yeah, okay, you can take that. Good luck with that. Hopefully you win. And we really tried to set up Eric there because Eric and I knew that his Astra Militarum list would like absolutely obliterate the Renegade Raiders list just because of the tanks that are included there, the accursed cultists, everything there will get shredded by the Scions really effectively. So we really tried to pin the CSM, and then we ended up getting at the very end, but it was at the cost of having to pair you into Necrons. So I mean, sorry, into Eldar. So how was that game with Conrad?
That was good. I always had a blast playing with Conrad. Great player. Just really communicative. I remember it was really ironic because we ended up playing at the same table that we played at the singles of TGX last year, at the very same like area of the room, and we were like, oh, we're back here again, but this time our voices aren't gone. Great. But yeah, it was a really good matchup. He had a lot of fire prisms. Wasn't expecting that, and I was like, "Oh, He had a lot of anti-tank, anti-custodian weapons." And the table that I had, I believe, was the heavy one where you couldn't hold expansion very well because the way the air terrain was positioned, there was nowhere where you could hide behind a wall without being shot at. So it was really hard for me to hold expansion. And the mission was Scorched Earth, and you need to hold two in order to keep yourself in the game. Um, yeah, I pulled it out just because I really pressured his expansion, and I made it in such a way where I baited out certain units. I specifically traded down points of tanks so that he would shoot the tanks because they were a threat. But because he had to move assets to that side of the board, it gave less pressure on his expansion, so I could hit his expansion with an Ingress Warden Squad. And there was one little area of an angle there where I could hide it for a turn, where I could raise his objective. And that raid was able to get me not just enough points to squeak a win. And what's really ironic about Jason, when he says about pairing everyone into tight games and then setting up Eric, is that if you look at our score, it's exactly even. Like I can't, my game into Conrad was the exact opposite of Adel and Adrian, and then your game with the Ario with Taylor and Ryan were 10-10s, and our winning factor was the setup we wanted. So I think the pairings were I think we get the right thought process there to pull the win.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like again, my game against Ari, he was a fantastic player, very analytical, and he had like all the movements like down to a T. You know, just making sure that he moved his Zangors perfectly where he needed to go. His thought like the Rubik Marines with the Infernal Masters were always there to overwatch me, and like playing Creations of Bio, it's a melee heavy list, so initially I looked into this and I was like it should be fine. And then I'm like, the more I played it, the more like I kind of like sunk into my chair figuratively because I was like, man, like there's so much Overwatch here. I can't really do anything without getting absolutely like shredded by the flamers. So I ended up really just forcing the primary. I always tried to take him off primary, even if it was like giving up like big assets like my possessed bricks or chosen the Chaos Lord, whatever it may be. I was always keeping him off on five primary, and then that was really the deciding factor because he we ended up scoring the exact same secondaries. We scored 36-36 each on secondaries, but then I was up 30 on primary, and he was 25 at the end of the game. So it was still a 10-10, but yeah, like definitely like he basically tabled me at the end of the game, and I had I think just like a couple cultists left and a rhino. That was really it. And he had like Magnus and all his stuff still.
Yeah, again, I used to play T Suns like last year, and they are still, even though through a nerf, they still have a lot of damage you have to respect, and especially for a list that like yours, where it's very focused on the melee aspect of the game, you have to really respect or be able to accept that you're gonna get overwatched, and you're gonna have to face that music sooner rather than later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we managed to pull up the dub here. That brought us to round two. So on our round two, we faced the Halton Heretics, which is our other Halton team, neighboring Halton team, and we faced Halton Heretics Alpha. So we had Dave, Tim, Neil, Diogo, and Norbert on that team. Jason, again, take it away. If you're the captain, what were your sort of thought process there with the pairings?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the thought process here was exactly the same. We just used Necrons as a first defender just because he wanted the table pick of light, so he can get the best angles. He took on Black Templars, and I think he chose Black Templars over I believe it was Death Guard because no one wanted to play Death Guard. It was like such a bad matchup for like a lot of, especially my list and I believe Eric's list. Oh no, no, it wasn't Death Guard because we would have paired Death Guard because Silent King ignores the mods. I think they put up something else. I think it might have been World Eaters instead
I think it
or
was World
something like
Leaders
that.
too. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
World Leaders.
And then Ryan said that he can probably take out BT a little bit better just because there's actually a lot of bodies there, and some of our lists don't actually have enough pieces to trade with it. So he kind of like took fell on the sword on the for that one, and he ended up getting a slight win there. So kudos to him for that. Um, there was an option, I believe, for you to play Tim there with on Astra Militarum, but you ended up picking Diogo instead on a Death Guard. And yeah, Diogo's no slouch. He's plays on Stutter Scrub, fantastic player. So yeah, and I know that you going into Death Guard as Custodes isn't that good because that -1 save really hurts you because it puts you under invuln essentially on like all of your weapon on all of his weapons.
Yeah, that game was definitely, a grind to say the least. I remember because like my tanks were whiffing for the first three turns. Like I believe two tanks shot five Plague Marines and couldn't kill it, and I was like, this is just
Yeah,
like how
I
does this
remember you telling me about that post game, or like you finished your game and you came over to my table and I was still playing Neil, and you're like what is going on here? I am like whiffing everything on the first two turns. I'm probably gonna get 20 out, and I'm like, no man, you got this. Don't worry, just keep going, just keep grinding it out. And
I was like, how do you roll four ones in the ones? Are we rolling? What is going on here, guys? But yeah, I did a really foolish mistake. And this is something I'm still learning because Warden, I'm not a big fan of Wardens, but Folgers made me respect them enough to try it. And my biggest mistake in Diogo's game was I said he had a bunch of DSTs at the Strength 3 anti-infantry flamer.
Mhm.
And I was foolish enough to be like, I'm not gonna pop the form final pain shooting phase. I think I can tank this because all of his Terminators were really close to me because I had sent a Warden squad into his expansion early game to contest the objective, contest primary. And I was like, I can tank the shooting. Yeah, I didn't tank the shooting at all. I failed like so many 3-up saves, and he picked up the whole Warden unit with the Flamers alone, and he charged a Blade Champ before wounds and picked it up. And I was like, oh, okay. So, lesson learned: pop the 4-up Final Pain the first time you need to, and then figure it out later.
Yeah, those DSTs did he pair with the Lord of Virulence as well to get like the reroll or the additional like AP or
Did
something
he
like
have a
that?
Lord of Virulence? I knew he had two sorcerers. Yeah, he didn't have Virulence.
Oh,
He had Typhus that did the mortal wounds, and he had two sorcerers that did once per battle, like strength 8, neg 2, 3 damage.
yeah, and then they have -1, right? With the cast a
Yeah,
spell and melee. Yeah, so that's
yeah, yeah.
pretty gnarly too. Yeah.
Yeah, the dice roll was really not my favorite that game. I remember he put 10 cultists in midboard to sticky it to make me come out and take it. And I knew I had to kill the cultists, so I put Draxus up with the four guard, and I shot with additional AP, and it killed 5 cultists. And I was like, oh, great. It's gonna be this kind of game. So it was definitely a scrap, and Yoga was definitely no slouch, and he made me work for that 10-10. I was scraping for points. I was happy I got a draw there, and it definitely set you guys up, you Jason, for the with the Chaos Knights, yeah?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like we got really good pairings this round because we knew that my list would have been quite effective into Neil's, as well as again Eric's list into World Eaters. Just because I'll go over Eric's quickly before I go into mine, but playing into Index World Eaters as Astra Militarum, it's pretty annoying to say the least to get for World Eaters, just because they like Eric's list has the two catachans for Scout. He has Gaunt's Ghost for Infiltrate. So there's just a lot of roadblocks where the World Leaders player can't actually like do his full move, auto advance 6, advance in charge, like like all those things to like kind of touch
Hmm.
it turn one. And on top of that, Eric still has the Quillons to like 6-inch deep strike. So if he lines up a charge that's more than 6 inches, then Eric just all he needed to do was just to like ingress the Aquilans in, and then afterwards he wouldn't be able to charge anymore, which is like super irritating. Um, but yeah, going on to my game with Neil, I I knew I was gonna have trouble taking down the big knights just because their strength or their toughness 12, and a lot of my weapons are capped at a strength 6. So what I ended up doing was oh well, first of all, Neil was playing the Grotness detachment for Chaos Knights. So it was the one where you can soup in a ton of cultists, and the knights will eat the cultists to get sustained hits and lethal hits or something like that, or you can get both if there's an enhancement. So he had like I think he was playing really like 4 little dogs, 2 big dogs, or 2 big knights, and then 80 cultists. It was crazy. Like he didn't reserve anything. Everything was on the table, and it like filled up his entire deployment zone. Looking at it from deployment, I was like, how am I going to kill all these things? It was kind of crazy. But then, really, the stars of the MVPs for this match was really the Warp Talons, just because they're able to affect like basically guarantee pick kill at least 10 cultists. And then once they kill something, they can actually go back up into reserves. So it makes it so that I can make very aggressive plays, line up these aggressive charges, go into the 10-man cultists, pick them up, and then safely go back into reserves without having to think about them getting shot. So I kind of did that like just nonstop. I had the talons lined up, kill some cultists, go back up in the sky, ingress them in the following turn, and then just kind of rinse and repeat. And then I think by turn end of turn 3, Neil had run out of cultists to do anything, so he only had the big dogs left, and then I ended up just kind of like dogpiling one of the big knights with a ton of cultist or a ton of possess and chosen, took one down, and then one my chosen squad just like ate I think like 36 shots from one of the despoilers, and then that effectively wiped out the entire squad there. So kind of knew that was going to happen, but it hurt to say the least to see 10 chosen just kind of evaporate into thin air in one activation. So, but
Oof.
yeah, but because of those big those killing all the cultists, I was able to really up my scoring there and get a big differential by the end of the game.
Yeah, for sure. And that sent us to the third round. But, before we leave to the third round, the Halton Heretics Alpha actually ended up, that we were the only loss. And they ended up scoring podiuming as well. So congrats on third as well, guys. That was a great showing all the same. We'll go on to the third round there. So on the third round, we faced Bloodbath and Beyond, and they're a set of really good players. They had Mike Harrison on Tau, they had Philip on Knights, they had John Henry on Orcs, Luke on GSC, and Zach on Chaos Demons. And I'm just gonna go out and say this right now that this was if there was one round where I could say I was a true grenade jumper, it was this round.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, like we looked at this list in our kind of like when we were doing our homework, and we were all kind of like what the f does this list do? Like no one knew really what it did. Eric had a vague idea saying like I think the big bird can indirect through one of the demons or something like that. But besides that, like we had no idea what was going on in this list besides like just having like birds and plague bears or something to like hold objectives.
I think on our matrix it was just question mark.
Yeah, it was
It
literally
was literally
on our
question
matrix. It
mark.
was literally just question mark, like three question marks for everyone because we had no idea how to deal with this list.
Yeah. So Jason, please go tell us about how you paired us.
Yeah, so this one, the the pairing was quite simple. Again, we used Ryan as our first defender, and they had Tao as their first defender. So we ended up giving them myself or Space Marines for Tao, and Mike was smart enough to not choose me because of how aggressive my list was, and he was playing Kion. So if he chose me as the attacker, then I would basically just bum rush him turn ones two, and then by the time his actual army rule gets activated, he probably wouldn't have much left to use. So good for them to get that pairing or not get that pairing, so to speak, and get Adel so they can get that 10-10 draw because at the end of the day, Tau versus Ultramarines, it's just going to be a shoot fest. So it's just like whoever can roll, more shots or more hits and saves and stuff, right? So um, again, like this one, when we got to the second defender, they put up Zach, I believe it was, and then afterwards we were like, no, they didn't. They put Luke, I think, as the
I think
second
with Luke,
defender.
'cause I
Yeah,
was
and
second
then
defender, and I had to choose between demons and orcs.
right, yeah, we put you up as second defender. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah,
Yeah, and then you were like I don't know what either of these lists do. So you're like, it's like it doesn't matter for me. And then I said, you know what? I can take orcs only because I know orcs. Like, because like I want to play the like tactical brigade as well, right? And John was playing tactical, so I had a very rough like semblance of knowing what the matchup was. But then we're like, yeah, if I take orcs, that means you're defaulting to demons, and good luck with that, right? So we just kind of like gave you a pat on the back and just sent you on your way to the heavy table there with Zach there.
yeah, I think at the very end of the day, it was kind of like if I picked demons, if I went to orcs, it'd be you and I not knowing the matchups on two tables. But at the very least, if I picked demons and the rejects would have played, and you got orcs, at least one of us knew one of the matchups on the table.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's what happened there.
Yeah. So when I played Zach, I asked him a bajillion questions. I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, I have no idea what your army does. Like, can you just tell me what it does?" And I can basically the TLDR is you're right. It can like indirect with the birds, and he basically has like tokens that he can give out to his units where you can basically re-roll dice. But whenever he uses those tokens, I get those tokens that I can use to re-roll dice. And one thing that we figured out, halfway through deployment was, oh, right, you're Zinch. So how much of your attacks are psychic? And that's when that very niche detachment rule that Talons has comes into play with a 5 up Phenol Pain and 1 CP 4 up Phenol Pain, and the sisters having a 3 up Phenol Pain. And I go, oh, so at least this makes up for my lack of knowledge of your army. Because I can at least stat check you a bit more. And
Hmm.
that, I think, really helped. just because of that 4-up funeral pain. On top of the fact that Zach would use flux dice or flux tokens to amplify, get more breakpoints. But the downside is it gives me more save throws to re-roll. And to keep a long story short, this was the grindiest game I had, and Zach's a great opponent. He was very courteous. He kept repeating his stat lines and abilities to me because there was just so much to absorb in a 3 hour period that like I had to just keep asking rather than trying to remember. There was so much going on, and I had a few lucky cool tricks like heroicing onto an objective. I did spike up with the 3-up funeral pains. I remember, I forgot it was Kairos or the Lord of Change. Whoever can indirect, he indirected my sisters to pick off my funeral pain,
Mhm.
D3 damage, and he killed one sister after the activation.
Oh,
Because
jeez.
yeah, I rolled really hot on 3-up funeral pains, and I rolled really hot on 4-ups, and it was just kind of like having that 4-up funeral pain for 1 CP with the sisters nearby allowed me to keep the Warden's 4-up funeral pain active for longer, which gave me more board presence throughout the game, and I was able to scrap that 10-10 with next to zero knowledge of that matchup. So I'll thank the dice for that.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a job well done there.
Yeah. How about your game?
Yeah, so going into orcs with tactical there, another grot misattachment that I played. They they're kind of guard like similar to guard in a way where all the war bosses are able to kind of give orders to either the unit they're leading or someone that's within 6 inches of them. Um, One big thing to note is that with this type of detachment, it really opens up orcs to be more of an all-rounders list. So traditionally, you think of orcs and you think it's a pretty monophase army where it just kind of was and charges at you for 1 turn and really punches you hard, and then kind of falls flat afterwards. But with this list or with this detachment, like you are actually going to be a pretty good shooting threat army. So John's list had he had the 10-man flash kits. He had 2 bricks of Ludas. He had the Breaker Boys, which is effectively just better knobs right now to the points, and they're 3 damage weapons, so they will pick up Terminators, Chosen, Possessed, all the likes. Any 3 wound models just instantly get picked up by that. So I realized that, and I knew that the one weakness of orcs was the fact that you can really easily wrap the transports. So I was I went first. Oh, actually, I actually went first in all 5 of my games, but this game was no different than where I went first. I moved forward, I advanced and charged, and I was able to tag 2 of the trucks turn 1, and then I actually blew them up too. So he had to disembark with them, and then what ended up happening is I piled into some of his ludas, so he had to use a fallback and shoot strat, and I just really just never like let up on the gas. I really pushed one flank really really hard, and by the end of turn 3, that side of the table was completely gone. And then I used that extra space there to use my talons to ingress in and take his home, and then he took my home. Effectively, like by I think by turn 4, we had switched deployment zones where like he was in my deployment zone, I was in his deployment zone, but my army was just slightly more durable, and I was actually able to eke out the a small win there. But yeah, he had a couple of good secondary draws, turn 4s and 5, and then afterwards, that really brought him back into the game, and he was able to do some key secondaries there.
So from what you're saying, John definitely was able to scrap back points, and that's all you can call for, ask for at the end of the day, right? Is just get as many points as you can, hope it's enough, right? So that got
Exactly.
us, yeah, so that got us to end of day one. We were able to be 3-0, and we were get kind of nervous, we're getting to the real shark teams. Not to say that the other 3 weren't, but we're getting to the real spicy stuff. So we got our pairings, I believe, the night before, or am I?
Yeah, we knew who we were gonna play round 4 the night before, so yeah, like, we ended up pairing into GTA 40K again, but this is the Wrecking Balls, and yeah, just looking at the names there, you can see the all these people here are all either world class players here, no doubt. So, and previous teammates, we played with them at BPO as well, right? So we knew them, they knew us. It was going to be a good game, regardless.
Yeah, for sure. I remember in the pairings, we're like, all right, let's get ready to go. And we're like, we knew that these were guys were going to be really hard to dance with. So yeah, tell us what was your thought process here for the pairings?
Yeah. So for these guys here, we we actually toyed with the idea that we were gonna put you up as first defender here for quite a long time in our discussions. I think the night before, just because I think you were able to bait out like the most of the bad matchups, and the bad matchups that we did not want to play against was mainly the Chaos Space Marines for most of us, and also the I'm pretty sure it was the Astro Militarium just because it's Nick Jag.
The Jag
But
effect.
yeah, exactly. But do you remember who we actually put as first defender? Was it Ryan
I think it
again?
was me. I think I was first offender because I
I think we
specifically,
put you, yeah.
yeah, I needed heavy table because heavy table meant I could scrap it to anything. And then the lighter heavy, the way that the tournament had chosen is that I could not hold anything out, any expansion very well. It would force me to
Right.
overextend, which is not what I'd want.
Yeah, in the light or medium tables, yes.
Yes, and kudos to Ryan, who was Ryan Bell in their team, the other captain. He saw that right away. He identified that break point, and what they did was they knew that I wanted heavy, and they gave me heavy. But what we didn't anticipate, I believe, was that we left Adel later on the pairings with a not so ideal table that was light, that didn't have good shooting lanes.
Yes, yeah. So light was kind of like a misconception, or they're kind of like a red herring there, where even though it's a light table, the due to how WTC works, a lot of the area terrain footprints meant that there were actually not a lot of angles for Adel to shoot in, and it was really just like there were two, I think, lanes of fire. So all of his tanks had to funnel through these two areas, whereas Chase's army with the fly blown host, the Grotmus attachment allows him to scout forward, and he has stealth on his entire army. So that makes it that much harder for Adel to really put a punch in against the Death Guard.
Yeah, and then the hard angles allowed Chase to just stage up easier and hit him a lot easier, and that's what kind of made that pairing fall apart.
Yeah,
For my game, I think on the table I told you I can probably give you an 8-12 loss, and it seemed to paid off as it was a 13-7 for Jag. I got lucky, or not lucky. I went first as well all weekend long. It was can I just roll like shit for one round, please? But in this game, I wanted first. And the reason why is because it was Terraform, and I deployed specifically in such a way where if I got first, I could immediately swarm my objective with 5 wardens, a rhino, and assisters in the rhino to just say, this is my expansion. And I got lucky. I rolled a 6 on my Blade Champ squad, and I just basically surrounded my entire expansion turn one, and I surrounded the Rhino completely to terraform, so that even the Rough Riders moving 15 inches, they couldn't touch the Rhino, and I had 18 OC to just keep it, so I could score terraform over the rest of the game, which was critical in a scrapping game. And I think Fireside Podcast does it really well. This was one of those standard games where I played to lose. I didn't once try to. I stalled Terraform on his expansion for one turn with Sisters, and the rest of the time I just didn't even bother going there. I think I had one lucky charge where I was able to slingshot onto his home field for one turn with a single Warden, the banner, and a Blade Champ, and it was just so happens it was the turn that he drew Defend Stronghold and was keeping it. So I was able to get him off of one primary and the 3 points defend, which really swung the game to be closer.
yeah.
The
Not
Jack,
to mention he's forced to keep it until next turn to discard. So
yes, yes. So it net me, I think, from Terraform was 4 points. So it net us 7 points. There's a kill point and a half, which is great. But the jag effect is a jag effect. I got just Custodes don't trade well, and the Scions coming in terraforming meant I had to trade down constantly, bring things out, and yeah, he just weathered me down enough where I had no resources left. At the end of the game, I think I had Sisters and a Warden squad left, and that in my home field to score four
Mhm.
points, and that was it.
Yeah, definitely an uphill battle
Yeah.
for that
How
one.
about you? You had the mirror, right?
Yeah, I had the mirror, and like the score kind of says it all. Where like going into the game, I knew I was going to be at a slight disadvantage. Because his list is better in the mirror because he has Nemesis Squad, which is the Night Lord Squad kill team. That was when you're in engagement range with them. You are not allowed to use any stratagems, which means you cannot heroic, you cannot interrupt, you can't fight on death. Like you don't get access to any of that stuff. So that's definitely a mirror breaker. But the other thing I didn't consider was that Nick Redford is just a better player than me. Like he the way that he deployed his army was extremely strategic, where he was able to get get onto his expansion while having possessed to to heroic if necessary. So he presented me with a problem where if I don't get rid of these warp talons, they're gonna score in primary, and then they're gonna start threatening my home. And I just didn't know how to solve it. I probably looked at this map game state for like 10 minutes, and he was looking at it too, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I don't know how you solve this." Even with like we run basically like very similar lists, and and what happened was I went first, so I moved my possessed onto my expansion, and I started terraform, and that was probably like one of my biggest mistakes that I did. I should have done terraforming with another squad and then move my possess forward kind of as a shield, kind of like what you did with your wardens and Rhino,
Hmm.
because that just invited him to advance and charge his chosen onto my expansions because we're playing on Crucible of Battle. The deployment zones are quite close to each other, and possess moved 9 base, and he actually rolled the movement buff, so his possess were moving 11 base, and
Yeah.
then he would just advance and then spend a CP to charge me, and then take me off the point. And I stopped the terraform, and from there, because he was able to connect with me first, I would always be the one to lose more resources faster. And based off of that, and then the second on the round three, I had defense stronghold, and then because I didn't solve that warp talent problem earlier when he had it on his expansion, he rolled like a mighty like 5, I think, on his advance. So his warp talons moved a whopping 19 inches and were basically right in front of my cultists. Picked them up, and he scored behind enemy lines, took me off defense stronghold, took me off primary, and it was just like kind of like one blunder after another. And like, but what I was envisioning for this to be like a slight loss to me ended up being a bigger loss. It ended up being a 15-5 in my head. And then by the end of the game, I had no resources left. I couldn't do anything. And he was just scoring primaries, scoring his secondaries, and then ended up being 19-1. So it goes to show that, like, you really can't just pick up a list and play it. Like, if you have the reps, it's gonna show. Like, that's where the skill difference is gonna come in, and this is quite evident where Nick Redford was able to score a 19-1 against me. Like, but to say, like, putting that aside, Nick is a fantastic player. I love playing him. I would play him any day of the week.
Oh yeah.
Just great learning experience for me, and just a fantastic player.
Yeah, all these guys are great guys. Like they're just high energy, great guys. Like I was talking to Nick while he was smacking my ass about how like I want to come to LVO, but he's like, I don't know if I want to go to anymore and stuff. So like always a great time, win or loss. They're just great chaps.
Yeah, it's just always great to just play Warhammer with these guys, regardless of it's whether it's a win or a lose.
Exactly. And they end up winning first. So congrats to these guys for taking the first gold and yeah. So we got sent down for the final round, and we got
Mhm.
paired into Team Sweden. So again, another group of great players. We've played them in the past. They've always been solid contenders, and we were paired into them. So we were paired into Lucas Badgery on Tyranids, Alex on Tau, Chris on Leagues of Votann, Matt on Orcs, and Chris on Knights. So yeah, you were the captain. You were the one that was
Sure.
doing it. Take it
Yeah.
away. What was your thought process there? What were the pairings like? The process.
Yeah. So this one we went back to our tried and true Necrons first and kind of see what happens. So they presented us with Imperial Knights and Tau, and I think Ryan actually wanted Imperial Knights, but then as an oversight on my part, I failed to realize that this Imperial Knights list had like I think like six Helverins or something like that, and yeah, they have anti-fly two up against DDAs and stuff. So I think that was something that we as a team really overlooked, and
Hmm.
which ended up resulting in a loss for Ryan there. So that was our bad. But the good thing was that for Anthony, I going into this game, I knew for sure excuse me, I wanted to pair Custodes into Tyranids because from our day one experience, we were like, okay, this feel no pain thing from your talons, like you actually have a detachment rule, you just don't ever use it. So let's actually try and use that to our benefit here. So we wanted to pair you into Nids because Lucas's list was extremely skewed towards doing mortal wounds via battle shock with all the neurolictors and the stratagems and Norns and stuff like that, all the synapse things. Um, so yeah, we ended up giving you, or not giving you, we ended up kind of like having Tyranids as I think it was the champion, where you were also the champion, and then everyone else was kind of just gonna try and scrap. So going into that, like we knew that you were gonna get a not a huge win as we see here on the scoreboard, but I was expecting like a 15-5 because at the end of the day, like he still had a lot of monsters, and I know Custodes historically has like a pretty tough time going into like a lot of monsters
Hmm.
when you only have two tanks. So
Hmm.
yeah, so let me know how that game was.
Yeah, so I credit Ryan for this win in the round. And the reason why I say that is because um, it's a lot of stress at the end of the day. It's 5 rounds, and especially if you were set up and things aren't going your way, you can get in your head and you can really fold and you feel like you just failed the team. But he, knowing what happened, I believe what he told me was he sent the Silent King in and he went to Canis Rex, and Canis lived on like 3 wounds. And at that moment, he knew the game was going to swing hard against his favor. On top
Mm,
of the fact that Halvrin like picked up Trog Stalkers and he filled a ton of saves beforehand. So he knew immediately by turn 2 that it was what was supposed to be what we thought was a favorable matchup was turning really heavy into Chris's favor. And he did the best thing I think was telling the captain right off the bat that like, hey, I'm about to get a huge loss here. And I think that's what secured us the round because when I was told to push, I was playing for a small win because that's what my cap you told me to do. And when I heard that, I was like, all right, I have to go all in now. So I managed to draw a bead to the Biovore that was holding his backfield. So I shot a tank, and luckily I didn't death guard it. I actually hit and wounded and killed the Biovore, and that stopped him from holding one. On a hold one, hold two, hold three, we're taking hold. And that I knew Lucas wasn't expecting because now he was starting to push up midboard and he didn't have enough units to screen. So it gave me a pocket to ingress wardens in his backfield. And he put his Nero Tyrant to replace the Biovore to continue holding his backfield. And that's when I was told to push. So I went all in. This was the 20-0. It was very risky. I basically shoved 15 wardens into his face. I advanced and charged all of them. They all connected. And what was really risky was I didn't pop the 4 at Phenol Pain when they charged. Because
great.
I know wardens don't kill a Norn, especially on one activation. And as you see, as I expected, both Norns were alive but wounded. So I had to suffer through a fight back with only Master and a Wound and my 4-up Bond. And the Master and a Wound actually came in effect really hard here. He rolled a lot of twos on his, a lot of threes on his melee, and he rolled a lot of twos on his Melta. So that really helped out because I had to wait for the charge on his turn to put the 4-up Funeral Pain because he had two Scream Killers that would connect with me with like strength 10, 10 attacks, damage 3. And then I popped the 4-up Funeral Pain and I made the 4-up Funeral Pains. And because I spiked those saves, I was able to kind of withstand, have 18 OC, and wipe out everything on the objectives. And then by turn 3, he had, I think, unfortunately, only had one Tyrant Effects and I believe a Scream Killer left. And a
Mhm.
couple, yeah, and that's how it swung. But again, the 20-0 does not reflect how risky of a play it was. Because if I hadn't made the 4-ups, it would have been a 20-0 the other way. But I took that risk, and this is one of those things that I didn't learn when I was younger, when I was like starting out in teams, because you hear all these pros being like, you need to know how and when to push, and was a risky play. And that was the first time I actually experienced that when I was playing for a small win and going, I have to do something super risky to win this round. And I did it, and that's how the pieces fell, right? So,
Yeah, definitely rewarded for acknowledging that, and like kudos to Ryan for acknowledging the fact that yeah, he was gonna be getting a loss there, so that he
mhm,
would we would the onus would be on someone else essentially to kind of get that win to push the differentials back.
for sure. And then your
Yeah,
game
like
was
yeah,
into
like
Votan, right?
yeah, even in my game, like when Ryan told us that like yeah he was gonna be suffering a loss, I was actually trying to push as well against into Votan, but Chris did a great job at kind of like keeping me at bay there. Like when we played, he had deployed a lot of his things on the line because he Votan has a lot of scouts, like the bikes can scout, the Sagittars can scout, the Jaegers have infiltrate, so he had a lot of ways to kind of like hedge against me. But what I did was I I also just deployed my possess online. I was like, okay, I've gone first 4 times in a row. I'm probably gonna go first again, right? Like, and sure enough, I went first. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna send like my possessed in, well, roll the advance, see what I rolled. I rolled like a 5, and then I ended up tagging both land forts, both uh both Sagittars, as well as the bike squad, and the land fort ended up surviving on 2 wounds after my possessed had done like the devastating wounds once per game kind of thing.
Mhm.
And because of that, like he was able to activate with all 4 of his tanks and just kind of pick up a ton of my possessed. Like granted, he was still kind of stuck in his deployment zone, but then he had this uh, smart foresight on deployment to put his Jaegers up into one of his expansions so that he was at least scoring secure no man's land or easier to get engaged on all fronts because his bikes can lift now and stuff like that. So um, it was definitely a slug. And then I was getting sloppy with my play because it's round 5, it's tiring, all that jazz, and I ended up having a small pocket where he was able to ingress an Iron Hair champion into my backfield, and then it was just like this solo dude, and then he charged into my cultist, took me off defend stronghold, and then didn't kill all the cultists, so I still had 3, so I was still controlling it. But I no, I actually moved off the objective, and then I lost defense stronghold that way because I had to fall back, or else I couldn't shoot the champion or something like that. So it was pretty rough. And then that was before he dropped in uh, uh his 10-man Hearthguard, like the Terminator brick as well. And that thing just kind of like looks at whatever it wants and picks it up with all the plasma shots and all the grenade launchers and stuff like that. So at the end of the game, again, like very similar story to all my other games where I basically moved my entire army from my deployment zone to his deployment zone. And then he owned my deployment zone. And yeah, like I was so close to getting an 11-9, but it didn't matter at the end. It was just going to be a 10-10. And Chris was a fantastic player. He very, very clear with his communication and intent, and we had a very fun, clean game. It was
Yeah.
great.
Team Sweden's always a pleasure to play. Like Lucas was a stellar opponent. Like we taught. I love competitive games where you're working with your opponent, right? That's the best kind of competitive game you want to play. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just being able to like always understand exactly what's going on, like saying like, okay, the distance between my unit and your unit's going to be 17 inches. I move 6, which means it's going to be 11-inch charge. Like very clear. There's no like nickel and diming you afterwards saying like, oh, it's actually maybe it's a 12 or whatever. Everything's kind of decided at the beginning and in the movement phase. So it doesn't really matter how you move your models. You can move them however you want. We already decided that it's going to be an 11-inch charge. So that's just what you got to roll. Like you got to roll the 11, right? So yeah, always playing like that's kind of like playing by intent, right? So
that's the perfect way of playing it. So yeah, at the end of the tournament, GTA 40K. So the team we played fourth round got first. We got second, and then Halton Heretics Alpha got third. The team we played second round. And overall, it's a great event. Yeah, I know Fab and Lionel personally. They're great guys. They run a great event there in Mississauga. Kudos that it's so close to us at least, because other team events are usually really far out. Um,
mhm.
yeah, like, I know for us, like for me at least, I'm going to Las Vegas Open, and I think at the time of this recording, exactly a week from now, I'll be on a plane to Las Vegas. And that's going to be really fun. I think it's 1,200 players, over 1,200 players going. So, first time,
Yeah, I can't wait to hear all the stories you have with playing like 8 rounds of Warhammer or 10 rounds of Warhammer, is it or something like that? Like
it's
if
10
you make
if I
top
do
cut.
good. It's
Yeah,
10
it's
if
10
I
if
do
you do
good.
good.
I have plans Sunday with my girlfriend already, so I might submarine to avoid top 16 just so that I don't cancel those plans. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a great time. And as a team, I know we're going to do the Torchlight Teams event. We're going to be doing the Toronto Teams Open in April, and we're planning on going to Canhammer as well in May. So
Yep. We
I
have lots
know,
of lots of team events coming up in the near in the next couple months.
yeah, like the Q1 and Q2 is jam-packed with team events, and I'm all for it. My wallet's not all for it, but I'm all for it. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening to our first podcast. Hopefully, you guys learned some insightful stuff about our journeys through the thick and thin. I think our next podcast will be about my Las Vegas opening experience, however good or bad it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
Oh
sounds like it's going to
gosh,
be a good time. Looking forward to
no pressure.
it. Good luck.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and stay tuned as well. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also make sure to follow us on Instagram and check out our live battle reports. Whenever we play, whenever I play, I try to stream it as much as possible. So that's why you see like Stodes matchups there. But be sure to check out our battle reports there and our other podcasts that are coming out in the near future. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care, everyone.